Good afternoon and welcome back to the Purpose Playbook. Good people doing good things. Really lucky today to be joined by Lucy Spencer. Lucy is the Director of Education Boutique and the Director of Recruitment for eTeach. So Lucy's going to tell us a bit about herself today. I'm really looking forward to it. So, hi Lucy, welcome.
Nice to see you.
Tell us a bit about yourself and your journey so far.
Okay, so, well, I guess if I go for where I am right now, as you say, I've got quite a big company now. We support learners who are disengaged from education, something that you're very aware of, and we look at reintegrating back into settings. So really what that looks like is a lot of team members working with lots of different tutors across England and making sure that the best people are in front of the disadvantaged children, trying to get them back in. But I mean, really it comes from my love for everything education and doing it a bit differently. So I've never been one to kind of accept the status quo for what you're told has to happen in education. I remember when I was at school sort of sitting there being like, why do I have to learn English in this room specifically, when there's the whole world out there? So I guess I've always kind of felt like education is something that I've been a bit confused by. And so it's cool to be able to sort of put our own little stamp and our own little brand of education out there, really.
So let me understand, you work in tutoring for young people that are struggling in mainstream education. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, the word tutoring is more of a word that I've sort of come from. Like when I left the classroom, I was a classroom teacher. I taught, internationally. I taught in some quite deprived areas of England as well. And when I decided to leave, like, traditional teaching, it was to go into tutoring. So you're one-to-one, your parents are paying for it, in a family home, kind of traditional, what everyone knows as tutoring. But I also got very involved in tutoring as an industry, and we wanted to see more. I mean, it's been so well documented how important tutoring or one-to-one mentoring and coaching, how transformative it can be in a child's education, especially when they're struggling. And I just sort of thought, why aren't we doing this more in schools? Why aren't we doing, why are schools and tutors were effectively, when I started 8 years ago, almost in a battle, because I remember when I was a teacher and a child in my class told me they had a tutor, and I was like, I almost took offence, I was like, what? My teaching's not good enough for you? Okay, yeah. I see. But actually so I've been very heavily involved in trying to get those two worlds kind of merged a bit more together. And obviously during COVID, that's exacerbated and sped up that procedure. But yeah, it's very much about just supporting schools to understand how tutors can help. But really the word tutor, a bit like a word like dyslexia or ADHD, there's a lot of misconception around that word tutor. So I guess the word I prefer to use is like educator. It's like personal education, bespoke to them. And yeah, that's kind of how we deliver.
And what made you talk about been going for 8 years, what made you make the jump from being a tutor into starting your own business? And were you nervous about that?
Yeah, so when I left the classroom, that's when I went into tutoring. And initially, for the first kind of year, it was just me. I started a business. I was like, I'm going to go limited. I want it to be a business, but I didn't really have any grand plans of making it big or anything like what it looks like now. So I feel that, some people really start a business and they like plan it all out and they think about how they're going to grow it. And to be honest, that wasn't the experience that I had for the first 2 years. It was very much like, I'm going to try different things. If they work, I'll do more of them. If they don't work, I'll try something else, kind of thing. And so I was tutoring, I was doing my own, stuff, and very quickly parents were like, oh, can I introduce you to a friend? Oh, can I do this? And I was totally full. So I was I remember being so nervous about leaving the classroom. I didn't even tell my mum. She wouldn't mind me saying this, but she comes from a very like employee mindset kind of background. And so, you become a teacher, it's super safe. Why would you leave that to then start your own business? That's just, in her mind, that would be crazy. So I'd saved up like a couple of months it was just after I got back from Dubai, got a job in a school, saved up a couple of months' salary and thought, right, I'm just going to give this tutoring thing a whirl. And then, like within a month, I was totally fully booked. And then I was like, I'm having to turn people away. And so then your business brain starts going, okay, how could I support more people? Or could I get someone else to come and work with me? And then they could do some stuff. And that's how it kind of became a business, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And how did you not be the product? Because obviously
that was super hard.
Because I think that's a lot of people that start businesses. You said you were full pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But when you grow a business, there's a lot more to it. So how did you kind of step away from that bit, the tutoring bit, which you obviously love and enjoy, and incorporate other people into the business?
Well, to be honest, until like 7 years in, so maybe a year and a half ago, I was still delivering tutoring. Not obviously anywhere near as much as I was at the beginning, but that has been a super slow process. And the reason being is that I always, from day one, when I started the business, I thought like, right, well, to begin with, I am the brand because I am the only tutor, right? So that's great. But then, as you say, when you then want to start stepping away, people go, no, I want you, or no, I want to speak to you about this. And it was really difficult. So one of the strategies I used as I was getting like administrators to help is I used my mum and my sister, because then it was like, oh, I'm Lucy's mum. And sometimes that would be a little bit of a link for the people to go, oh, okay, well, at least you're related to her or something. Yeah. But for me, it should have been easier than it actually was. And I think a lot of people find that in their business journey. But one of the biggest things I found is you almost personally, you want to stay involved. So when people know that there is a possibility that you'll call them back, or there is something, when it's still half on the table, or even like 1% on the table, they will hang on for that, and no problem, I don't mind waiting, no, that's fine, she can call me back whenever, or I don't mind waiting till summer until we have some sessions. I understand she's fully booked at the moment. But as soon as you take it totally off the table, then they have a decision. And I'll be totally honest, we did lose people once that decision was taken off the table. But I've seen it now go, 5 years down the line, 6 years, and those people have come back. And I think that's really interesting. And I think I wish I'd kind of maybe had heard more about that sort of process in my business journey when I started, because I think people know it, but until you actually get through the other side, where now I'm from a customer's point of view, I'm hardly involved at all. From a brand point of view, I'm still heavily involved, and I just kind of coach and manage all the consultants and the tutors and anyone who needs my help, or if there's something that sort of escalates to a level where on our little business matrix it needs my support, that happens. But it's so different. Like, it is quite interesting. Yeah.
I know from the research that we've done that Sri Lanka played a big part. A trip to Sri Lanka years ago played a big part in everything you've sort of done and developed. Yeah. So do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. So basically, when I was in year 11 at school, it was 2006. It was when the tsunami had just happened in like India and Sri Lanka and everything. Like, it had obliterated like that part of the world. And like how people go on like world challenge trips and things like that, and in the summer we were offered, next year there's going to be this opportunity to go to Sri Lanka, work in a school, help rebuild kind of the school and things like that. And I was like, oh yeah, I'd really like to go to that. But I wasn't traditionally, I would say I got very involved in school life, and I was good at music. I was in all the sports teams, but I wouldn't say I was a traditionally like high achieving student in terms of, I didn't always like toe the line. I often got kind of told off for, sort of things like uniform and all sorts of bits.
Pushing the boundaries.
Yeah, and this was very much like, this is a sort of part funded thing. And so you had to really apply for your role. And I remember sitting there, like, I've always been quite good at talking though. So I was like, you went through these things. You first did this written sort of test, and they gave some places away based on the written test. And, some of my friends, they were like, they were just the perfect student, so they all got in from the written thing. I didn't make it through. But then it was like the interviews, and I was like, right, I'd like prepared everything. I was like, I really want this. And I was like sitting there with all these like head boys and, things like in my opinion, like people who really deserved like a place on this trip. And apparently, like, my interview was so good. They could tell how much I wanted, and I got my place on this trip, and I was like buzzing, like, I was like, yeah. And when we got there, I was literally like, culturally you go to different places sometimes and you're like, wow, this is not what I expected. Mm-hmm. It was so shocking. We were going on, we went to Unawatuna, which is in the south of the island, and we're like traveling down there, and you can just see like a boat in a tree, and you're like, that is very high. And you're like, wow, that's how high the water was, and things like that. And then when we got to the school, there was, I can't even explain it. Like, it was so, I'm not someone who cries, but I almost could have, because it was so like overwhelming. Like, they had like flowers for us. They were all out. They were all like chanting, singing, like, and they invited us all in, and they were just like so buzzing that we were there. And we were just like, but we're just like humans as well, it's so weird. And I just like, I've never experienced. And then we taught like lessons, and they were like hanging on our every word, and we were like taking photos, and it was the when you used to have the digital cameras that you could see the picture. Their mind was blown by it, and I was just like, this is crazy. Like, we are so lucky in England. And there's me sitting there going, I'm not going to do my homework. They would have like, bitten off someone's arm to be in my position that I've been going, oh God, I've got to go to school. Yeah. And I was just like, that's so, to me, that was just so like shocking that I'd felt like one way about school. And then there was these people that would have absolutely given anything for it. And I was like, why do we get like that? Why does our system make us feel so sort of like entitled that we almost find it annoying that we've got to go to school? And I think that's where like that buzz for learning that I experienced there was like, how do we get that in England, where we actually do have the funding and do have the resources to put in place like a really exciting curriculum for people? So yeah, that's why it was so important to me, because that's why I then went on to apply to do teaching at university and all of these things. It was just amazing. Yeah,
it's an incredible story. And I suppose when you're talking about the system back here, you've been able to change that by doing the bespoke packages for you talk about the SEN young people that you work with. So tell us a bit about that, because I know personally how much you help people. Yeah. I'm sure over the 8 years you've helped hundreds and hundreds of young people be more successful and change their pathways. And that was a big moment for you. So tell us a bit about specifically what you do with the SEN people and how you do the reintegrations back into school. Because I know, I think 100% reintegration.
100%, yeah. And obviously that can look different for everyone. But reintegration is something that I just don't think is really understood. At the moment, we're looking at writing, we're in the early throes of writing like a research paper about reintegration strategies, things like that, because it's so not understood. And the problem is that because we don't understand it, we're wasting a lot of money as a country, right? What we do effectively is we work with learners who don't have necessarily EHCPs. I think a lot of people think, oh, well, if it's funded, it must be someone who's already got EHCPs, but it's not. Everyone knows it's been quite heavily like reported in the news recently about EBSA and children with emotional based non-attendance and things like that. And that's very much the profile that we support as well, where there's like educational trauma or school trauma. But I think the most important thing in understanding that, how we take someone who is saying, not I won't go to school, but I literally can't go to school. There's a big line between them. And unfortunately, the government at the moment are just kind of pushing all the onus onto parents, fining them. We've seen increased fines coming in September. And the problem is when you've got a learner who is like saying, I can't go to school, and then the parent becomes financially penalised for also having that child not in school, you're taking away another or the guardian, as well, but you're taking away another safe person for them, because they're then also saying, no, you need to go into that place where you don't feel safe. So that's the problem initially. And then what we do is, first of all, we have to improve understanding of everybody, because when you say things like school trauma, what I often get a lot of schools or individuals who work in this kind of role in schools, they say, well, there's not really been an event where anything happened. And I think first of all, the most important thing is to understand the profound effect that like long exposure to cortisol, high levels of cortisol in someone's body when they feel stressed, can have on someone. And that's what happens when someone says, suddenly they just couldn't come to school anymore. To me, that should be ringing alarm bells in people's head of this child has obviously been masking, has been just like getting through, and suddenly their body has had the physical response of just going, no, I can't put myself in that situation anymore. And trauma does not have to be one big thing. It's not one big event. I think trauma, because of like, you know, when you hurt yourself, it's like a trauma. It's like one thing that hurts you. Or when you think of a traumatic event, it's like one big thing that then causes things like PTSD. That's not what trauma is with these EBSA students. It's long repeated exposure to putting yourself into a situation where you're not being listened to, you're not being heard, you're not being like, your needs are not being met, and you've been sort of trying to just like get by, and you know, maybe inside you're so worried about getting a detention that every day you're just like in a constant like of the, you know, fear of like, am I going to do something wrong, get a detention? That is not a safe space for someone. They need to be nurtured. They need to be you know, shown that that's not, you know, that shouldn't make you not want to learn. Because the problem is what we like, the sort of way we sort of put everything into the packages that we do is we need to, first of all, this association with school is where you learn. We need to break that, because as soon as school becomes not a safe place, it's almost like the Hebbian learning theory, where if you've got you know, cells that fire together repeatedly, like school learning, it's like they wire together. So it's you're almost telling a child that if you can't get to school, you can't learn. And for me, that's like so damaging, because at least if we just had the viewpoint of young people like, I can't go to school, but I can still learn.
Yeah.
That is all I want people to be able to. That's the reason we exist. That's the reason we want that to be there. Like, you're not able to go into that setting at the moment, but you can absolutely do some amazing learning things. And I think, you know, PDA is my area of specialism, which is a profile on the autistic spectrum. That's pathological demand avoidance, not public displays of affection. As someone said to me the other day, they were like, public displays of affection, what? Like, no. So it's basically where every demand, so if you think of just us sitting here right now, you know, we've been told, wait for 3 seconds before you do this. We've been told, like, look here. Like,
yeah, that's,
you know,
our cameraman.
There's a lot of demands right now.
I get it wrong, right?
So we will be like, for us, we're able to deal with that, you know, but for someone with a PDA profile, that would literally cause them to have an anxiety response similar to being chased by, you know, a tiger through a forest or something. Actually, a tiger wouldn't really live in a forest, would it? But
well, it can for today.
But that's where we're trying to support these learners by reducing the anxiety, reducing the way that learning is positioned, because that's another problem, is the way learning is positioned. It's like you're coming into a learning environment. The teacher is almost seen as this like ultimate knowledge giver, which, let's be honest, now that AI is on the scene, that's going to go very quickly. So if you're a teacher who thinks that you are the provider of knowledge to a learner, you're replaceable. You know, like in the future, you don't have a job anymore. Yeah. So what we have to do is have the educator, you know, learning, listening, acting as like a collaborative kind of partner on this like little quest for knowledge that we're all going on. And we need to not just focus on, oh, you're of school age, so you have to do the curriculum. And then when you get to the end of the curriculum, you're done. That's ridiculous, you know, because then we get 80% of autistic adults are unemployed. And then the local authority, who are paying for all their support, you know, when they were back at school, are then paying from a different pot for them when they're older as well. Yeah. So there's huge, massive issues with like the funding side of it and the, you know, the provision that's put in place. What we need to do is, you know, improve what we're spending money on when they're younger, getting them into the workplace. And
stop spending money when they get older.
Not just gap filling while they're not at school.
Or ticking boxes.
You know, we've got to look at business projects. We've got to look at ways that like excite learners. I don't know many learners at all who wouldn't be excited at the prospect of like, if, you know, starting a business or, you know, doing something that they're super passionate about every single day. You know, why would they, you know, have a problem with that? So it's like, that's how we often engage and re-engage, and it needs to be a bigger part of it. Yeah,
I love that. And I've been lucky enough to see your journey over the years, and I love the fact you use the word educator, because I know you've got a vast range of educators who it's that relationship building, isn't it, as well? So you build the relationship with the young people, and then you get more out of them. I watched a TED Talks once that sort of said, you don't learn from people you don't like, right?
No,
so
exactly.
That's the beauty of your business, is you can work across the board and build those relationships with the young people to get them back in.
Totally. Yeah, that's exactly it. And it's not about, we're not one of those companies. And that's why, again, I say the word tutoring, I don't really ever call ourselves a tutoring company unless it's on a form where someone needs to understand that it's educational one-to-one mentoring that we're providing. But the tutor is so important. The match of that person is so important with the young person. So we do a lot of onboarding, questioning of the parents, like things they like. We do like kind of show and tell is basically the first session, because how can you not really like someone if they're just talking about something that they're excited about, and then they listen to what you're excited about? That's like the perfect first session. So we it's all about the young person. And then obviously once we get them in a good place of trusting the person that's working with them, the educator, great things can happen. Then we can start to steer what we know the local authorities want them back into school or find in the right setting.
Can you tell us, have you got a story of a young person there where it's been really successful?
Well, actually, like when this goes back to when I was doing it, just one person. But I mean, we have loads of case studies, but one of the particular ones where I've been like super, super proud is one where I was working with this young person. I kid you not, our first session, the mum said to me, Lucy, I haven't actually been able to leave the house. This young person was 7, 8. I haven't actually been able to leave the house since they were born, because separation anxiety, right, of being away. So the first session, actually the second session, because the first session we actually just like sort of, he showed me around, showed me the things he wanted. The second session, we sat by the door, because I said, look, for us to really be able to start to do cool stuff together, like mum needs some time back, mum needs to go and do stuff. And he understood. But again, with PDA, it's like, you understand it, but can you let it happen? It's two different things, And we sat with a little timer for 5 minutes, and she left the house. And that was the first time that she left the house for like 8 years.
Wow.
And we were sitting there literally with our backs to the door and like looking at this timer on my little iPhone thing at the time. And he's like, where is she? What's she doing? And she was literally just going to go and post a letter in the post box, which was like minimal meters away from the house. I was like, so she'll probably be by that hedge now. Can you picture the hedge? Like, and we're doing all of this. And since then, this young person, so I worked home educating this person for 2 years. It was very difficult, and he couldn't read, right? He just couldn't do it. Very, very common for PDA. But I sort of knew he could, because he'd say things to me. I'd be like, where did you learn that? Because I knew he didn't have his own iPad and things at this point. And he was like, oh, I don't know. I just know it. I'm like, okay. But I was, because what we see is often they can actually read, but they're not ready to show that they can read.
Yeah.
I just remember this one day, just before we then looked at him going back into school, and he went, can you come into the like playroom thing? Because I want to show you something. And he had this like oceanography, like encyclopedia. And I was like, oh, cool, you're looking at a book, like amazing. Like, shall I read some to you? And he went, don't talk. And I was like, okay, all right. Like, no problems. And then he literally just read the whole page. And this was like mad, like really scientific vocabulary. And I was like, dude, can I, your mum's not here right now, but can I video you? He's like, no, you can't. I was like, please, because we're gonna make your mum cry. And she came back and he was like, no, I'll read it to her when she gets back. And he read this page and he was like, I've been able to do this all the time, but I just didn't want to show you all.
Oh, amazing.
And I was like, oh my God. So that's like, it's like he then felt, you know what, I want to show them what I can do now. And that took 1.5 years. And even sometimes the parents were like, Lucy, we're not really making that much progress on the reading. I was like, I know, but we aren't. And I get it. But I was like, but you just have to kind of trust the process. And it's happened to me, that exact same thing with PDA learners. It's happened like a couple of times. Learners about that 7, 8 year like age, and then they just suddenly go, do you know what? And the floodgates open, they just read. I am fascinated by it. And I'm like, how do we make it better? How do we help that happen earlier. But
yeah,
it's that was just amazing. And he's now gone on. He went into a school. He's been in school in another country. He went, all these different things, and he's now back in school and education, and everything.
Yeah, amazing. I guess what's really stands out for me there is obviously the impact on mum and the family, and like you must find that a lot in what you do across the board, that it's not just the young person, it's family and it's lifestyle. You must find that a lot throughout.
Totally, because a lot of the parents, it's such, you just can't understand it until it's you. People say like, oh, it must be so hard, and I'm like, but like no one understands until it's you, and you see how it impacts your life. And I know that sounds really doom and gloomy, but it's a huge thing, and people aren't believed, or they say to school, but at home it's terrible. And school go, but at school they're fine. And it's almost like gaslighting.
Have you found a big difference since COVID in terms of like the separation anxiety, and how was COVID for you throughout, like for the business and stuff? Did it hit hard?
No. So COVID was really an interesting time. The biggest thing for me, I think nationally, we've seen more of a media presence for children being out of education since COVID, because it kind of fits with the whole, oh, look what COVID did to us. But quite frankly, the system's been broken for absolutely ages. It's just that probably what we're seeing now is people have seen how it can be done differently, and there are it was hard for everyone, wasn't it, not socializing, we're seeing a huge band of learners at the moment who missed key critical milestones on their little educational journey, and that's hard. That's hard for the teachers, it's hard for the parents, it's hard for the young people, but like business for us during COVID was very interesting. I feel like I went grey during COVID because
you got a good hairdresser.
Or I should have gone grey. Because it seems to me like when I look back on it now, it feels like an out of body experience. I had the most crazy, it was just crazy. I was tutoring. I went back into tutoring whilst I'd got the business to not really having to tutor so much. I was tutoring 16 hours a day.
Wow.
7 days a week during COVID. And I set up this thing because I was training all the teachers initially when do you remember when we were like, oh, schools might have to close? And no, they won't. And I was like, if they do, there is a lot of teachers who are not going to be set up to teach online, So I did training for literally hundreds of teachers in those first few days when schools were like, we are going to be closing. I did training for hundreds of teachers, like how to do Zoom or Teams or whatever, and how to use interactive, resources, and how to share your screen, and all of these basic things that we all now think of as basic. But back then it was like mind blowing for people. So that was the first thing. Then it went to like, oh, everything's online. And so then it was like training all the tutors and the teachers to go online. We were very lucky that I was quite used to delivering online because I work with lots of international families as well. So we were kind of like front and center at like helping everyone to initially
educate,
get
right?
on. And so it was crazy. And then I was like asked to go on all these like media things about talking about the trends. I was like talking after the guy who's like the CEO of Waterstones on the BBC radio, and I'm like, I'm just a teacher, what is going on? And then obviously, when it was then very apparent that schools were not really always delivering or able to deliver, like maybe the online learning, I was like, well, why don't I just make a package of online support that parents can then just buy into? Most of it was free, to be honest with you, but I did 5 lessons a week, and it was like £20 for all 5 lessons, and all the different year groups and everything. And I was doing that for the whole of COVID. And it was just amazing. And some of the my favourite ones were the creative writing. So I was doing online creative writing lessons to upwards of 500 kids at a time.
Wow.
And it was amazing. So it was very challenging, for my team as well, because if if a link goes wrong, and then you've got 500 people going, the link's not working. Some of that was challenging, but it was amazing. And I really was now I look back, I'm like, how did I actually tutor for 16 hours a day? Like, and I did a 24-hour tutor-thon to raise money for charity. I like tutored for 24 hours and I did like 18 different countries in the 24 hours. And I'm like, looking back now, like, I must have been just running like on adrenaline. Like, yeah,
but just think of the amount of young people you helped through that, and adults. Yeah, because I remember trying to get on Zoom early doors, and I didn't have a clue what to do with it. Yeah. Where do you see tutoring, educating? How do you improve it further?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. I think there's some really big moves that are going to be happening in the education system at the moment, especially with all the election stuff that's coming up. But for me, I think one of the key things is, you know, the formation of all the multi-academy trusts and things that are happening at the moment. You know, that looks like something that probably is a way that's going to continue going. And so there's some really exciting things with, as the mats get bigger and bigger, in terms of how we can get tutoring, and what it's, you know, it's not just tutoring, it's like that one-to-one coaching is what I would call it, or education, a bit more personalized education. There's so many ways that are quite exciting that, you know, it's like journeys through school. And I just think that if we look to where I hope learning will get to, is that almost like you've got school as a place, and we all know, you know, you guys know with story as well, it's like children need to feel like they belong. So there's they need to be in person at some points. They need to feel that they have that sort of social belonging. But I really think that tutoring has to really focus on getting children into the workplace. Agreed. For me, that's the thing that the traditional curriculum at the moment is so far removed from. We see that, it's not just anecdotal, this is my opinion, we see that from companies now. They don't really care about what GCSEs are. It's almost like a tick box. Got GCSEs, got A-levels. It's not what grade did you get. Because there's nothing that really business, and I use business as a very wide term, there's nothing that really business goes, you know what, that's really valuable to have. It's more about the person and how we get them there, and the life skills and stuff you have educated them on. Absolutely. And the independence. And that's the really important thing. I think with tutoring, one thing we had to be very careful of is learned helplessness, which is basically putting too much emphasis on that one person being the person that helps you learn. I do see a lot of that where we work with people who've had a specific tutor for a long time. I'm always really cautious about that when we make placements, especially when they're long-term ones. We have to always look at the legacy of how we're going to build in other individuals, or ways to get out with that person, and experience other people. Because if you're going to work in a workplace, you're going to come across all sorts of people, and you're going to need to be independent, you're going to need to be proactive, and none of the curriculum at the moment, you're basically spoon-fed this curriculum, you're spoon-fed strategies to get as high a grade as you possibly can on an essay or something. And there's no one, then people go into the workplace. I see it with people I employ as well. You know, it's like when you meet people at interview and you give them scenarios and they're just not quite able to maybe think on their feet as much as we really need them to be able to do in the workplace, or to really, you know, be in a growth workplace. And that's kind of scary. I can't get through a day without using algebra. Which is what I learned. So, couple more bits. I know obviously you're really big on women in business. I know you've done a few talks. So talk to us a bit about that, and you've been instrumental in giving women advice to get into business. You've obviously been really successful and doing an amazing job. Talk to us a little bit about that. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because I never would have thought that when I started and left that I was going to actually have a business. So I think that's an important place to start, because it's not like I'm coming from this going like I'm an expert. Everyone has their little case studies, but what I'm quite good at doing is seeing patterns and trends. So I think when I give advice to people, it's not coming from obviously, yes, I'm lucky, like I've had some success, but it's not that I think that my way is going to work for someone else. It's very much about, like, I see a lot of people being incredibly nervous to make a mistake. I see a lot of people worrying about, oh, what if this doesn't work? I think there's a lot of overwhelm. And I think that, and there's overwhelm for men as well, don't get me wrong. But I think that when you're, especially those of us teachers who have maybe been on maternity leave and then they're coming back, and it's like this, oh, but what if it doesn't work? And I think sometimes in life you've just got to go, yeah, it might not work. But then a bit like when I started, I was like, some things won't work. I won't do them anymore. And then I'll do something that I either really enjoy or maybe makes me money or whatever. And then I'll do more of it. And I think sometimes I don't think anything that I say to people is particularly profound, but I think it's quite simple. And I think what I'm quite good at doing, or what I've learned I'm quite good at doing, because people have said, oh my God, that's really helped, is that I think I just simplify things and just go, okay, because it's almost like a book. People are almost thinking about what's happening at chapter 20 and they're not even thinking about chapter 1. How can you get to chapter 20 if you don't even start reading chapter 1 kind of thing? So, and it's kind of the same with education and reintegration. You get people that are thinking about, oh, what school I want to go to, and oh, we need a specialist provision, we need this. You're like, but at the moment, they're not even engaged. They won't even open the book. So let's not even think about, obviously you might think about it as a parent. I'm not saying people shouldn't think about the, legacy planning and where they want them to be. But until you get chapter 1 done, don't think about chapter 20, and I think that's the important thing is I think there's a lot of noise in education businesses, but also just any business of like, oh, you've got to post this many times. It's almost like someone's made a business curriculum. And they're like, if you don't do this, you will not be successful.
It's like going back to school, right?
Oh my God. And so I'm like, okay, so why are you anxious about Instagram? Oh, because I've got to post 3 times a day and I've got to do this. And I've got, who told you you had to post 3 times a day? Oh, well, this person, that's great. If that works for you and if you've got time to post 3 times a day, I'm sure you'll be very successful. But why not just work on what will actually work for you? Want to post once a month? Post once a month. Make it a bloody good post, It just seems to me that everyone, and it goes back to that, we've learned this from school. Everyone is looking for the curriculum, the who's going to give me the star, or if I post 3 days a week, I know that I'm being good because someone's told me that is good. It's like A, B, C, we're and you don't get that in business. And to be honest with you, I think that's why so many businesses fail, because no one is there going, well done you, have an A, and we've been like, our brains have been brought up for so many years looking for who's going to give me the next bit of positive praise. And if you can't just be happy in like intrinsically and give yourself, if you need positive praise, give it to yourself somehow, like you're going to struggle in business.
Well done you.
Thanks.
It is incredible what you've done. I've been really lucky to see the work over the years. Just keep doing it. You're helping so many people and it's incredible.
Thank you.
Obviously, we've obviously got £500 that we pay forward. Was real. It is real money. So today we've got Story Group who are going to give you £500 to donate to someone or something that's really important for you, and we can pay it forward. So who have you chosen today to pay it forward to?
So I think that's amazing as well. Thank you.
No
Parenting Special Children is a local sort of Reading-based charity, and they do incredible work. And I think one of the most important things with small charities at the moment is, they're really struggling. And I just think, firstly, we support them as much as we possibly can, but I just think that's an amazing thing that you guys are doing with this. Okay. And I know how much it'll mean to them as well.
Nice. And thank you to Story Group for donating the £500 for that. It's been an absolute pleasure to sit with you and hear what you're doing. And Rich will be on with us in a minute to talk about the episode. Thanks so much, Lucy.
Thank you.
Welcome, mate.
I want everyone to know how many times you've just messed this up. They're only going to see this starting from here, but you've just like messed up about 5 times, and I want the world to know about it.
I haven't. Prove it.
Well, the bloopers will prove it, mate.
I'll see you brought your wheel with you.
I have brought a wheel. We are always looking at ways to improve this podcast. I'm not sure if improving is the right word.
You're only on it for 5 minutes. You don't make it that bad, mate.
Exactly. And after you being all serious, I think it's nice for us to have something interesting to do. So what effectively we're going to do is at the end of this little section, I'm going to spin that wheel. Or you're going to, because you're getting your knickers in a twist about it. And then we've got, depending on what it lands on, it's a little bit like roulette, really, because we will either just share a really positive story. So there's a few on that wheel. Or it's going to land on something about me, and I'm going to really struggle because it's just been thrown on me, and I am going to have to think on my feet.
I can't wait. I'm really excited.
Oh, God.
Anyway, brilliant podcast with Lucy.
Yeah, she is an inspiration. Just before the podcast started, she had to teach Brian to count, just so you all know.
Yeah, I've got to 3 now.
Yeah. Where do we start? I've got some stuff. So she taught me a new quote that I'd never heard of, and I think it's absolutely brilliant and can be applied in all areas of business. Do what you love and do it differently. I think a lot of people will do what they say, do what you love what you do, is a famous quote. And of course, if you love what you do, you tend to make a success of it. But the doing it differently bit is what makes a brilliant business or a brilliant offer. And she's obviously very intelligent and has looked at an industry that needs lots of change and has gone at it in a different way. And that's why she's so successful.
Yeah, I mean, I've been really lucky to follow Lucy's journey over the years. I've worked closely with her a few times, and she's a massive inspiration. Big thing we always talk about is those relationships, and what really struck me was how much it can change a family's life. So you look at the young people and getting them to a point where things are more successful or they're going in a different way, and that could be little things. It doesn't have to be big things. No. And she's looking to get them into careers, but actually, when she told the story about the mum leaving the house for 5 minutes, that's incredible.
It was. I said this to her just as she left. I think I made a connection, right? So she said something really interesting. She said, I think most people will know by now that if a business has an incredible purpose, it goes far. Purpose is the thing that drives people or business. And she said, the purpose is really, I can't go to school, but I can still learn, is the overall thing she's looking to achieve. And she talked about neurological connections. So if you can build that pathway in the brain for a young person, then they're going to go on to go and do bigger and better things. And I sort of link it to what she's doing. I think she's almost practicing what she preaches, because every time she gets a win being she puts a young person on a pathway, or she gets a young person reading to their mum, that's building a stronger neurological connection for her. And so every single positive thing that happens, her purpose gets stronger and stronger and stronger.
Yeah, and you find a lot of people in those industries are, one, very humble people.
Yeah.
But two, just want to give back. Mm-hmm. And that's absolutely what I got from her. Very, very humble. She's been very successful. And she's doing incredible things for educators up and down the country. I love the fact that she changed tutor to educator, mm-hmm. because
relationships,
and anyone can be an educator.
Yeah.
You know,
and you always talk about that TED talk. So that TED talk, what was it? Rita Pearson. For people who want to know, look it up on YouTube. She does. You've always referred to that. That's had such it's a big thing, profound impact on you, and you wheel it out at every occasion. But
you look at every stage of your life. You don't learn from people you don't like. You've just gone back to that. You just used my joke against me.
No, I didn't, mate. No,
just recycled it.
No, mate.
But yeah, you learn at every stages in life, right? And you learn from people you like. Mm-hmm. But really, really good. And it was exciting to have Lucy on.
I think so. One other thing I learned is, and I know I keep talking about the word purpose. I think it's a huge word in life, to be honest. It's why our podcast is named after it. But I talk a lot about purpose in all walks of my life. But something that she taught me today that I've never thought of before is, not only does she have the purpose, but she also has the perspective. Because she went to, was it Sri Lanka?
Sri Lanka, yeah.
She went to Sri Lanka, and she had the perspective that what we take for granted, they don't have. And obviously it had a profound impact on her. So I just wonder whether there's like a bit of magic that you can do in life where you get a bit of purpose in your life and then you go find the perspective which hammers it home.
100%. And I think we all take a lot for granted, right? So seeing that for her was made her go in a different direction. But yeah, thanks Lucy for coming on today. Right, I'm going to spin the wheel.
Oh, God.
And let's see how this goes. I am praying for a personal story.
Oh God!
Because I know you're fairly boring, but I also know you've got embarrassing stories. So let's go.
Boring's lovely, thank you.
No problem.
Oh, you have got to be kidding me!
Oh, literally made my day.
Read it out.
So it's landed on embarrassing personal story.
Oh no!
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Everyone's laughing, but no one listening to this podcast can see that. So this isn't the first time.
Oh, your voice is gone. You're right.
This isn't the first time that Brian's actually got me on a podcast to maybe talk about this. I'm going to tone it down because this is a family show.
Yeah.
So what happened to me that was embarrassing? I'd love to say that I've only got one story, but I could probably delve into about 50, probably from last year. But how do I tell this? I was going to a meeting at the train. So I was getting the train to go to a meeting. I live near Wokingham Station. It was Ascot week. So typically the stations during Royal Ascot Week are filled with people suited and booted, almost all starting to drink and having a great time. I was on my way to work. I went to the station. I needed the toilet.
Yeah.
I can't believe we're bringing toilet humour to this. I needed the toilet. I was rushing for a train. Long story short is I had a couple of minutes spare, rushed back to go and get my ticket, stood in the queue, tap on the shoulder. Old lady, excuse me, sir, you have toilet paper hanging out the back of your trousers. I looked down and I had toilet paper hanging out the back of my trousers like a tail.
Trying to be a horse, a mascot.
I looked round. No word of a lie, there must have been about 30 people in the station, and I genuinely saw three reactions. I saw horror, I saw amazement, and I saw people absolutely dying. I had to quickly ball up the toilet paper, get it out of my trousers, and then I looked back at the person serving me my tickets. Her mouth was wide open. She was astonished at what she was looking at. I got out of there, got on the train, still holding the toilet paper, and found a bin on the train, put it in there, rang my wife to tell her how mortified I was, and that called. We had to have 3 attempts because she died with laughter twice and hung up on me.
Oh,
so
thanks. Listen, thanks for being a good sport.
If this
good people doing good things, that old lady that day,
by the way,
saved you.
I will never forget the look in her eyes because she was mortified for me.
Yeah.
She was genuinely concerned, but she did the best thing ever because next port of call was walking out onto a packed platform full of people, suited and booted. So, yeah, that's me. I honestly can't believe that the first wheel was embarrassing.
Yeah.
I bet it lands on embarrassing again next week, and I'm going to make you answer it.
Yeah.
Be prepared.
I haven't got any. But listen, guys, thanks for tuning in today. Lovely to have Lucy Spencer with us. An incredible person who's doing such good things for young people and educating adults as well. Thanks so much, and join us for the next one next week.
See ya.
Bye.